our attorney general here in the state of Connecticut has joined a group of attorney generals from around the state. So the group is now up to 16 attorney generals have signed an amicus brief, which is basically like when you sign a letter of support, or I guess you can file against maybe as well, for the lawsuit, like giving your opinion on the lawsuit for the court to consider. And they're supporting the school's ability to protect the privacy of transgender students who have shared their identity with school staff. So in other words, if a student tells a teacher, hey, I'm, having this gender identity issue, or I want to identify as this gender that is different from the one I am, the teacher is not required to divulge that information to the parents.
Well, I mean, if they're trying to kill the public school system, this is a real fast way to do it. Because if they're coming right out and saying this, people will continue to leave in droves, and it's just going to be sad. It's going to be a sad state of affairs. I mean, I don't understand why they would want to try to drive a wedge between parents in this issue. Parents have made it very clear that we want to know. I mean, and also, people, the argument is, well, what if somebody won't accept them and they'd be abusive toward them? Well, that's why we have family services. Child protective services can be involved if there's a real abusive situation, but you can't just assume all parents are abusers. That's what they're doing here. They're right. Like, okay, we have to assume it's not going to be accepted. Why is that the assumption? That's a ridiculous, insane assumption.
Right. Well, this is what he says. That's basically his quote, is saying outing students against their will is dangerous. Like outing somebody means like it used to be a thing for gay students, like coming out, right? Or like out that you knew nobody else knew and you told everybody. So outing students against their will is dangerous. Students, especially LGBTQ plus youth who may lack support at home, need trusted adults. Yeah, and like, what does that mean? Lack support at home? Like, what kind of, like, what's exactly, it's like a broad statement.
I mean, this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. As you know, right. I have family members, I have friends, very, very close friends that are going through this right now. And the notion that, first of all, the parents aren't already aware, in large part. I mean, I had a dear friend of mine, and it was very upsetting to me, and I'm still not totally over it. She's a teacher, and she said, the parents that care, no. And that's not fair, because if you're a parent that cares, but you just think your kid is a tomboy or effeminate, and you're just letting them have some space, they might not really understand that this is a very different position that they're taking. So I thought that was really a terrible way to talk about parents from a teacher's perspective. But on the other hand, I mean, teachers only hear from parents when there's a problem. And I think that they have some teachers, especially in the middle school, which is largely where this is happening. I mean, it's brutal. I mean, you taught in high school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And high school is not easier, but it's definitely different than middle school. I think middle school is so super intense, that I have a lot of patience for middle school teachers, but I just cannot abide by any of this stuff. Like the assumption that I would abuse my child because I didn't agree is insane.
And the way that they put this, it's like, you have to do this or your student is going to be at risk for suicide and all these things.
There is zero evidence that that's true. That's the other thing. They are just propagating a lie. They're lying to parents. They're lying to the court. He should be held in contempt because that's ridiculous. It's ludicrous.
Well, they do have their sources, though.
Ludicrous.
They do have their sources. Let's read it and let's see what he says. So, again, this is officially put out, the press release by the Attorney General's office. So this is his specific quote here, but really everything in this brief is his official point of view. So it goes on to say, the coalition of attorneys general argue that requiring schools to out students against their will would undermine trust between students and teachers. See, it would undermine. That's the relationship that they're focused on, right? Creating impractical administrative burdens for schools and improperly inserting school officials in private conversations that should be between parents and children. What? Hold on. We have to read that again, because that is a weird statement, is it not?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense, actually. Wait.
So the coalition of attorneys general arguing that requiring schools to out students against their will would undermine trust between students and teachers. Okay. Creating impractical administrative burdens for schools. So it would be really hard for the schools to have to like call and inform the parents. Apparently, that's like, you know, they
couldn't just wrap that into the IEP because most of these kids already have one.
Right, exactly.
They're meeting with them regularly. How are they going to feel lying to their faces?
What's the next part though? And improperly inserting school officials into private conversations that should be between parents and children. So I guess it's saying like, if a kid wants their parent to know, they'll tell their parent, and like the student is allowed to have the relationship with the teacher, and if the student wants the parent involved in that, they'll bring them in.
Teachers are not doctors. They do not have any, there's zero there's no contract, at least a social contract that I'm aware of, where whatever you say in a classroom stays in the classroom. It is assumed whatever happens in the classroom, your parents are going to be called because you need to behave properly. So this is absolutely ludicrous. Again, I say it's just right. Maniacal. I mean, okay, let them do it, because people are going to leave, and you know,
I know, but I hate to have that attitude, right? Like, I can't sit here and act like that didn't flash through my mind, right? The thought, like, yeah, like, I'm glad they're going fully insane, because my problem in being like gleeful almost in them is that I know that it's at the demise of kids. Like, I know that there are going to be kids who are victims in hopefully what is just the short term, you know, at the very least.
Some of these kids are cutting their breast off. It's not the short term, and they can't.
Well, I know, but I just mean like the amount, hopefully, like, you know, I'm not saying what happens to the kid is short term, right? I'm saying like hopefully we can prevent this from happening, you know, like right as soon as possible. Like in the short term, we can stop this, so it has that effect for the least amount of kids. So that's why I can't even sit here and say that, like, yeah, like I hope they crack down. Like I hope, like, you know, that's almost when people
there's no,
I hope the economy fails so that Trump doesn't get reelected. It's like, oh yeah, you hope that poor people suffer, so like some do that, you know, like that's how I feel about that. It's like I can't hope that like kids are gonna suffer just to show off how insane the Democrats are. It's just like, just stop being freaking insane. Like, how about that? You know?
Well, I mean, on the other hand, people keep voting for them, so maybe we're the crazy ones. You know, I don't understand how Tom got back in. I just, none of it makes any sense to me. I don't think they know what they're voting for, and it's going to take.
That's true. That's been my whole point. Is like when I went through and I read the Supreme Court decision on affirmative action, because I know people were putting up posts so soon after the decision came out. You weren't reading it. You weren't reading a 200-page document, or it was almost 200 pages, or maybe it was 140. I can't remember. It was like well over 100 pages. And so I know people weren't reading it. I bet you people don't even know what it looks like, you know, like what the decision looks like, or that there's like the court's decision, and then there's concurring decisions, and then there's the dissenting decision, and then there's like, you know, people get to write their own dissentings. just such basic things. And I do hope, though, like, I'm not sitting here trying to just trash everybody. I think that this is an opportunity. And I hope that we can just realize that just slowing down a little bit, taking the time to read the actual source material rather than just working off of headlines and articles. Because that's the problem, is like we let the article headlines program us. We let them program us to have these knee-jerk responses rather than.
Well, I mean, you have to have a filter, right? Like you said yourself at the beginning of this, you use the New York Times as a filter. I have the Wall Street Journal as my filter, and so I feel like it's hard.
But like I pick my filters, I guess, like very, like I curate them, right? Like I seek them out, and that's another difference too, is that when you're just accepting what you're given, these free services on social media, versus like seeking them out. So like I seek out the New York Times because I know that my social media feeds lean towards what you might call the right, or like libertarian, or like liberty, health, freedom stuff. So I'm going out of my way to be like, hey, I want to expose myself to this other, more like establishment left-leaning point of view. I do also try to watch like the Young Turks, or like the Damage Report, which is what's that guy, Seth or whatever his name is, like Emma Vigeland. She was just on Timcast, that's going pretty viral right now. So, and she's like left. And then I'll listen to like the Daily Wire guys. Like they're really good for like getting like, okay, what's like the mainstream right point of view, because like that's also something.
No, I hear you. I also do similarly, although I don't listen to the Damage Report, but I listen to the the Young Turks, and I try to and you're right, like, because my feed likewise is more libertarian or right leaning, and then I just feel like I don't want to be in my own silo either, so I have to see what's going on. Although I have enough friends and family keep me in check. They're like, well, that's not how I see it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I do just want to say though that they, in this article up here, right, they have their own whole set of research that they do say.
Yes, but the Trevor Project,
they're saying this is what they say it shows, though. That they say that it shows that LGBTQ youth who report the presence of trusted adults in their schools have higher self-esteem than those without access to trusted adults. The LGBT youth who found their school and home to be affirming report lower rates of attempting suicide. So
it's just inaccurate. It's just not correct. I mean, I forgot who did a whole expose. I want to say the Weinsteins debunked the Trevor report, or maybe it wasn't them. Basically, like at this point, the Trevor report is like jibber jabber. It's just like it's malarkey, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's some information they've gathered, but their conclusions don't match up with reality.
What I've noticed, how the way that, so this is, and you can see right on the top, they have like the suicide thing as their headline. This is such a weird picture, like with the hand so big like that.
It's a strange perspective, but
yeah, it's so weird. The thing that I noticed about research, and you have to be, I would say, like pretty into research and reading it and looking at the actual numbers and the data and understanding the methods.
Well, so my husband's a statistician. I don't know if you remember that. That's like what he does. And so whenever I see things like that, I say, I want to see the actual data. And I want to know what the design of that was. I want to know what questions, how they were asked. Was it a Likert scale? How did you collect this information? Because it really matters. The book is very popular, How to Lie with Statistics.
You mean one of Bill Gates' favorite books?
Bill Gates, Obama, like everybody's got that. I'm not even
saying that. Yeah, these people like legitimately like have gone on live TV and been like, "Oh, look at my favorite book." Like,
yeah, right. That's thanks to that nod to your credibility, you jackass. But anyway,
yeah, but that's what they do.
It's a thing. I mean, it's very easy.
Mess with like what they're actually measuring. They're like, oh, it's safe and effective. And we're like, oh, good. It's like, we have this conception of what safe and effective is, but really it's like safe and effective for this very limited thing that they tested.
Yeah.
So that would be my recommendation, and something that I really like learned a lot about over COVID as I was digging into a broader amount of research than I had ever done before. Like most of my data work was pretty limited to just like, test scores and student tracking data. And, you have the back end systems that kind of do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So admittingly, my data and statistics aren't great. I'm much better at kind of having somebody else do that kind of stuff, and then taking what they say and then translating it and doing the summary end work of stuff. But what I did notice, instead of going to the conclusion of the research, which most people do, they go to like the introduction and then the conclusion of the research. They're like, I read the research, but where you really need to go is the methods, as you were saying, and then also to like the appendixes that have some of the charts with the actual raw data. So those would be
tough because I'm such a skeptic about data, because I understand too well whether it's through osmosis or just my own, I was in finance before this, so I had huge data sets that I was looking at. I understand how easy it is, even innocently, like, my husband's got PhD students and they're coming to conclusions from data, and they're not doing it like accident. They're not trying to have that outcome. They have in their mind like what they think might happen, right? And then they see the numbers a certain way, and then he has to peel that back routinely. I mean, it's a whole class on that stuff. So I think misinterpreting the data, bad data collection, it's very difficult to really get accurate numbers. And even when you do, those numbers don't speak to the general population very well. It's like, okay, you can have like averages and that's fine, but that doesn't really tell you how you should handle your child in a situation like that. And so it's not, I don't find that sort of data particularly useful, especially when it's so complex. Like each student is so different and each child is so different. I have 3 children.
Right.
Each one of them is dramatically different. I would tell them information in different ways, even. And so the notion that you can just like pen something that's going to be perfect for, oh yes, we should definitely not tell all parents for any children because this is what's best for everyone.
I just think that they just need to flip the baseline assumption. The baseline assumption should be that students are supportive. And this is actually something I was going to say before, is that it feels like on the one hand, they do make this nod, right? The new thing, if you listen to what Randy Weingarten and Becky Pringle, those are the heads of the 2 largest teachers unions, the big thing that they're talking about now are community schools with wraparound services. And they do this thing where they talk out of both sides, sort of like this thing is like, on the one hand, they want to make sure that within the school they can give the kid everything they need, but then they're also like, oh, it's the center of the community, we want to get everybody involved, we need more parents there. I mean, teachers talk all the time about how they want more parents.
They don't want the parents. They don't want the
support. Yes, exactly. So then when stuff like this happens, it just seems so converged.
Parents complicate things, as his amicus brief states. It's a logistical nightmare to involve parents.
That's crazy. That is the most crazy. I think that's actually the craziest part, right?
Well, that's we should, someone should write an article about that, because it just says everything you need to know. And so what else are they withholding from you? A lot. What I found out is that administration and teachers are like, it'll be fine. Meanwhile, your kid is freaking out. They're throwing tantrums and you're like, what the hell happened? Oh, I don't know. He got beat up in the bathroom the other day. Did you think maybe that would be relevant to inform a parent? Well, I mean, nobody was hurt. Listen, all I can say is I'm trying my best not to absolutely hate all teachers. I literally am a teacher bigot at this point. I cannot stand when somebody tells me they're a teacher. Before, I used to think, wow, that's such a tough job. And now I think, wow, How can you look at yourself in the mirror? If I was a teacher,
So, I mean, I share your frustrations.
I would be broadcasting so many messages, and I would wear T-shirts that say, "I'm not one of them. I'm not Randy Weingarten." I would disassociate so hard and fast that no one.
But you're different. But you have to realize that you're not the average person. I would say, like, regardless, right? So I mean, I don't think that it's
homeschool is what she means, and so I have long before any of this stuff.
I think though that it's not good to see the teachers as our enemies.
I'm trying not to. What I'm telling you is
we need to, in fact, we need to be, the teachers are the parents. Like,
Stephanie, what do you think parents are going to feel after they read what Tong just wrote?
I mean, they're not going to read it. That's the thing. They don't read it. They're not going to read it. They're not going to read it.
They might, if it gets into the headlines and they find out, okay, you know, I don't know. We're reading it. We're reading it.
I know, but
there are some parents out there that will find out.
Share this out, guys. Share out this stream to all your friends so they get this headline.
But don't hate try not to hate your teachers.
I don't think, listen, I have deep frustrations with teachers, and I think that they should be more willing to call out the system and call out, you know, they make a lot of like they do a lot of the activism stuff, you know, but I feel like it's sort of like the accepted activism, whereas like I really would like them to more directly call out the system, right? I would really have liked them to not sat around while schools were closed for so long and sat around while thousands of teachers got fired for not taking, you know, the shot in New York City.
That's why they don't
like that. I would have liked that. But at the same time, like, I do like very much empathize with teachers who have basically their whole life savings wrapped up in the job, right? Like they're halfway in or 20 years in and they're vested, and if they leave now, then they don't get their full pension. Like,
I totally get it.
So I have to say, like, I get it, and I want to both be able to like hold teachers accountable and like keep it real. But I also think that they do deserve credit. They do deserve to, you know, have, you know, be seen for, I think that most people like their kids' teachers. Like when they have a good teacher, and I had a lot of them, you know, growing up, teachers that we loved. I had teachers in my school who I worked with who were amazing teachers.
Okay, Stephanie, that world's dead. That world is dead. I'm sorry. It's dead and gone. I always tell my husband this.
Listen, even teachers who you think like have not great political stances can sometimes be really good at giving like delivering instruction, and like be like I see it. I see these teachers who I'm like not so sure about some of their political stances and their activism, but I've also seen them be really good at delivering instruction and building relationships with their students. Not always, right? Obviously, we have a dearth of instructional leaders in our school.
I don't know. I'm very
school
conflicted.
Has great teachers. And I think it's definitely more of a structural issue. At some point, structure meets individual. Yes. I do want to just pull up this one article I had up here because this is sort of
this is not helping.
This is the logical end, right? This is the logical end of all of these policies that we've been called across the headlines of the Hartford Courant conspiracy theorists. But we're not making it up. Like this is April 2019. This is 4 years ago.
I wish we had this when that bill was in front of us. I'm so mad we didn't have it. I don't know how we did.
Yeah. But and so this isn't just like a crazy headline that pedophilia being taught as sexual orientation in California schools. There's a video here that shows exactly what happened. So I'll read it because the video, it's a little like the sound isn't great. Mm-hmm. But it says there's a stunning admission came after parent information meeting last month for the Brea Olinda Unified School District, so this is in California, Stephanie Yates, founder of Informed Parents of California, asked school officials why they were teaching pedophilia to ninth graders. But instead of denying such an atrocity taking place, a top school official confirmed it was happening and acted like nothing was wrong with it. She says, this is done because we are talking about historical perspectives of how gender relations and different types of sexual orientations have existed in history, said BOUSD Assistant Superintendent. And then this is the video.
BOUSD, you mean BULLSHIT. Like she's full of it. Full of it.
And responding to your questions, and I will go ahead and email you back or give you a call.
Now you're normalizing anal sex and you're teaching that to the high schoolers. You're not going to answer the question. But not in front of everybody.
They're not interested in hearing those guards and sitting here.
Parents are not interested.
So I love they are. The ladies are still sitting here.
Okay, so answer me why you're teaching pedophilia.
So the first question she asked was, why are you teaching about anal sex? All right. And then one was like, oh, we'll talk about that somewhere else or something. Yeah. Right. And now she's asking the question about the pedophilia.
Pedophilia in school to ninth graders.
Teaching what?
Pedophilia. Pederasty, right here.
Pederasty, as I discussed with you before, twice in my office when you come to view the materials, I've explained to you that this is done because we are talking about historical perspectives of how gender relations and different types of sexual orientations have existed in history. So this is
Types of sexual orientations.
Something that's occurred in history, and so this is really important for us to include.
So that's the key right there, right? Is they're calling pedophilia a sexual orientation.
Which is exactly what we were calling out in that bill, and no one would listen to us. That is so infuriating. And there it is. There it is. Well, I did send that to Leslie Wolfgang yesterday.
Right. So, okay. I'm glad that you did. So yeah, and then this is sort of like, I guess this isn't in the video, but this is the exact point. So sex between a man and a boy is a sexual orientation, she asked. Torres did not deny it. It's something that occurred in history, and so it's really important for us to include, the assistant superintendent said, implying that, yes, sexual relations between man and boy, properly considered rape under laws of the state and every state, is a sexual orientation. And if you remember, they also changed age to be a protected class. Mm-hmm. So my thinking is that a kid can basically say that, oh no, I want to be with this person, and because age is protected, we can't tell them no because we would be discriminating against them.
Exactly.
But whereas,
well, that's one thing.
That's very typical of somebody who's being abused to identify with their abuser.
Yeah, they don't realize that this is an inappropriate relationship because they're a child, and they feel like this is, they get love bombed, and they, that's part of the whole grooming process. So it's just absolutely disgusting. I couldn't be more outraged. I'm just like, this is why I was like, well, let them blow it up, because it doesn't help for me to get like completely frantic about it. My children are not going to be impacted, but people aren't paying attention. They're just not. Parents are not paying attention, and their poor children are going to suffer like they've never thought in a million years they would suffer. And our whole society is going to suffer. It's very.
I mean, I am hopeful that more people are, quote unquote, waking up, that the problem is you don't hear the people leaving, right? The people leaving, it's quiet. They just go.
That's right. That's exactly right.
They are going. I think
our school system lost, since 2019, 250 students. 250.
Well, I think a great thing for people to watch is, I watched this documentary on the subway guy, Steve. I had said this on one of my other streams. I can't find the video right now, but it's on this woman, Stephanie Harlow's page on YouTube. You can just like check her out and then type in like Steve, the subway guy, who's also a pedo. And I think oh, here it is, right? The child predator. Oh, it's Jared. I don't know why I said Steve. Steve was like
I was like, what are you talking about? Okay,
Steve is
Jared,
the Blues Clues.
okay.
I think Steve was the Blues Clues guys who also
I
had
was legit thinking like the subway. I went to like the attack, and I'm like, I don't think that they were pedophiles. What?
No.
Okay,
Jared the
yes,
subway
Jared
guy.
the subway guy. Yes.
Sorry, yes. And it's because it's out of the context of like the trans conversation. I think that it helps you just see like grooming for what it is and
Right.
how these predators put themselves in positions to have access to kids, because he actually teams up with this guy who is the head of the youth programs at like the American Heart Association or the Red Cross.
I don't
maybe
remember.
one of those. But one of these other organizations, he's the head of the youth program, and then they're both like, oh, like they both start telling each other that they're into kids, and they go out, and he starts like a whole foundation and hires this guy as the head of his foundation, and they go around and just like party and like creep on kids.
Well, not that I just cannot not say that this week was the opening week for The Sound of Freedom, which is about trafficking kids and grooming children for pedophilia is part of the traffic. I haven't seen it yet, but I just know this because weirdly, I've been through trainings for trafficking, and so previous life. So anyway, grooming is a similar process when it comes to children.
Thanks for checking out this clip of Teaching Liberty Live. Help us beat the algorithm by sharing it on your social media platforms and with your friends. Also, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, tap that notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos. Plus, I go live every Saturday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, breaking down the big headlines and trending topics of the week. And let's make sure we stay directly connected, so head over to teachingliberty.org and sign up for my mailing list. Now, go watch more of my videos and share them with your friends. Did I mention that?
Come on.